Samayo.
Dude, that sweatshirt is fire. Where did you get that?
My G. You know what I'm saying? Little
Where did you get that?
I think I got this from the Gap, Brody.
Dude, that's sick. Are those flowers?
Yeah, those are flowers.
I'm a big fan. I'm gonna need to go to the Gap and pick something like that up. I'm totally wanting to copy you at that moment.
This is one of my favorite, man. I don't get to wear it enough just because I'm always in work clothes, man. Story of my life.
God,
you know what I mean,
dude? Yeah, those work restrictions, man. Like, imagine if you could just show up wearing whatever you want. I feel like you would probably have more results. Just like,
yes.
Someone
You mean you would get more results?
I mean, I'm saying, like, imagine if people could just express themselves fully, no matter the job, whatever the results are. Like, if you get to be more like comfortable in your own skin. You know what I'm saying?
Bro, I love the way you twist that. That was fire. No lie, relax. Dude, I 100% believe that.
This is that advertising PR major coming out and like, oh look, dude, there's all these positive benefits to being comfortable.
But I think that is a thing. I mean, we're at our best when we're able to be at our like natural state and habitat. So I think that is a great idea. When you encourage people to think outside the box, like, those aren't like the box. That's not the box that you told them to play in. These are their thoughts. So you get the best from them. You know what I mean?
I think so. Hey, maybe one day that's gonna happen in the classic whatever business settings that typically
I ain't waiting on that shit to happen anymore. I'm just gonna go make it happen for me. You know what I mean?
There you go. I mean, like, I kind of feel bad because like I'm talking about all this work clothes stuff and like I don't work in an office, so I'd get to wear whatever I want. But
you guys are special. You special bunch.
No, man.
No hate.
Whatever. I'm not trying to hate. How are you, dude? How's it going?
Don't switch this subject. No hate, man. I'm happy about everybody that get to work from home. My job just isn't one that I can do from home, which it's good and it sucks at the same time. But I would love to be. Yeah.
I think
I don't know if I can work from home. I gotta ask you. I'm sorry.
Please do.
Do you enjoy working from home, or would you rather be in the office?
I was just about to say I've done both for lengths of time, and honestly, dude, I frequently miss the social dynamics of working in an office.
Yeah.
I think that to me, especially being a social person, it becomes like isolating, and my motivation dips, and like that's a classic thing. I think honestly the best case is if it can be dynamic where like you're feeling like, I want to go in and maybe I don't want to go in. Or my schedule can be more flexible. You know what I mean?
I definitely think that is the best. That's the best mix.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of like you not going into the office, like some of like the personal relationships that you gain, like the water cooler talk thing.
Yeah.
I think those relationships are longer lasting, and I think you build a better rapport.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, you don't need to do that every day.
No. Okay. Dude, that's it. Like I spent time in an office and I have a small grouping of friends who I still interact with. Like, dude, I'm still jumping on Zoom and just like shooting the shit. I mean, like today I talked with my buddy for a good 20 minutes about some like dating stuff. And like, it's because we developed that like rapport. But on the other side of it, when I was in the office forever, there'd be like an hour and a half that passed. And we're like, oh, dude, we're just talking about Magic the Gathering for an hour and a half. Like, oh, we should probably go back to it. There's a lot of bullshitting, man. Like on either side of the table there.
I
like,
agree.
You know what I'm saying?
But the thing is, I think that like a lot of these workplaces believe that they do end up getting more out of you if you're at work. I don't agree with that. I don't necessarily agree with that because I've watched people work from home. Mm-hmm. They don't take lunch breaks. They typically work longer. They'll come back to projects because it's there and they don't have anything else to do, so they can finish it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think like the workplaces aren't thinking about this right, man.
Nah, I think it's happening in places, but these big institutions or these companies who have been around for a minute, like it's hard to change large operations and you got to do all the training and stuff. So I see how it takes them some time to come around. But I think it's a nuanced thing. Like everything else, there's no black and white on this. Like it's better or worse. I think it truly depends on the individual and the context. So I don't know, dude. But no, on that front though, like did we talk about this? Maybe we did. Like I've been hearing a lot lately that human beings are not actually built to be productive for 8 hours a day. Have you heard this?
Nah, that's yes, and I absolutely agree.
Yeah, dude. Like it, I mean,
I'll raise my hand to that one. I'm a testimony.
yeah, I mean, like what we're saying is like honestly, those breaks, those social breaks, are super necessary to get stuff done or to move those, to move the brain chemistry a bit and to keep it from getting stagnant. And then realistically, we work what, like 4 hours or something. Like if we really
Yeah,
count
bro.
it out.
Yep.
So I don't know, man. I'm really curious to see how that changes in time, especially as like all this technology stuff continues. Like,
Well,
is there one day a day where we look back at the 8 hour we look back at the 8 hour work week and it's like, dude, that's like listening to a cassette in your car. You know what I mean?
yeah, no lie. Yep, I agree, and I think with more businesses, like I think it's smaller businesses will make the transition at first, but and like maybe contracting and stuff. Where they go to like a 32-hour work week. I mean, I listened to a
Mhm.
story the other day and this smaller company had done that. Now they said that like their production suffered a little bit, obviously because
Mhm.
you're working less hours, so you have less time to produce the product, right? But I mean, does it improve the quality of life? Yes. I mean, are people generally happy to come back to work if it's only 3 days a week? Yes. Do I think people will want 2 days a week? Yes.
Probably.
Probably, yeah,
Dude,
but
this
it's
is
just
yeah, like this
balancing off.
it's a hot topic, this thing. Like, just
Yeah,
to nerd out for a second, I was just listening to a YouTube video about
mm,
post-labor economics, which is
okay,
essentially the idea that at some point in the near future, I mean, like you can go and look at the research on this, within five
yeah,
to 10 years max, AI and all the subsequent technologies will be able to do things at the same level, if not better than most humans. And therefore,
mm,
our notion of what it means to work will change. Like
change,
what a
100%.
job is, what a purpose is, will
Yeah,
change as this paradigm shifts, which is
I agree.
crazy, dude. Like what is that?
Yeah.
Is that like, does this become our job? Like is that the way that we get there where we just get to like hang out
Well,
with our friends and like share
yeah,
perspectives and get paid for it?
absolutely, and I think that and I think it's a good point, and I think through all of this, like artificial intelligence and like the shift in work environments and how easy it is to do projects that used to take, an ample amount of time and consume your life. I
Mhm.
think as technology advances, we'll gain some of that time back. It'll be twofold. I think one, we'll gain some of that time back. The second part of that, which is ultimately like, I mean, it's unavoidable at this time because the process is already rolling. There will be job lossage,
Oh,
but I
yeah.
also think that they will be added in different sectors. For
Mhm.
instance, if you can go to a restaurant and order from a robot and they can adequately transfer a message to a cook in the back, like, what are we
Yep.
doing? In
Yep.
Japan and Tokyo, I haven't been there, but I see this all the time.
Mhm.
Face-to-face interaction is like more rare. You go to a
Mm.
machine, you select what you want, and then you open the door and it's done. Now that's not AI. That's just a smarter way of doing business.
Yeah, more or less.
But still, you gotta think that at some point we're gonna gradually, uh, move towards that type of environment, you know?
Dude, imagine that though. Like
Yeah,
when I have these conversations, when I think about it, I'm just like, it almost can't compute like the mass amount of people who are just gonna have to change how they think about
yeah,
doing things. And like,
I know.
I think it goes to like I mean, it can affect like how you even perceive yourself when you
Yeah,
start to really think about this. Like your purpose in your job, like if you're like the average, let's just take Americans, the average American who's working any day job, like a white collar, blue collar, whatever. It, it's a repetition, it's a routine, and there's like some certainty in what your experience is going to be.
right.
But then once all this goes away, like, does that mean that that certainty becomes lessened, or that we have different purposes that
Yeah,
help us to, like, we still get to upkeep that like story about ourselves,
right.
like in just a different way. Like, I don't know what
Yeah.
that's going to look like, dude.
Me either. I mean, I guess, like I said, I'm excited about it. I'm not really
Yeah.
nervous about it because I don't think it's something. It's like a freight train. You expecting a freight train to stop in like 20 feet when that's just not the reality.
No.
Like I think this thing is already moving and it's going to keep moving for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll tell you is like, I'm a huge car guy, so I studied a lot of like, the technology behind the cars. I love
Hmm.
car building, the racing, and then also the production manufacturing part of it, because
Yeah.
that's kind of, my area of focus right now. So with that being said, like before, when they first started building cars, Model Ts and all these like traditional cars with wood wheels, like it was a person assembly line.
Hmm.
And then Ford came in, changed the game up, and was like, "Nah, we're gonna do this by like machines."
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they went from producing like 100 cars a month to like 100 cars a day. I
Dude.
mean, and sure, some people lost their jobs, right?
Hmm.
But they also shifted to like different groups and different manufacturers. Like they just kind of moved them more down the line so that the labor was less intensive,
Yeah.
but they got the job done still. So it's kind of one of those things.
Yeah, I think it's one of those like cycles that we go through as a society or a civilization
Yeah.
where like technology naturally improves. This one is just like rather than it being like, oh, the assembly line takes over
Mhm.
the job of this manual labor, which is like honestly, it's
Yeah.
probably good. That was probably a dangerous job, for those people to
It
be like,
was
let me just
super
weld this
dangerous.
thing right here with this heavy thing hanging above me. Like that was probably a good thing.
Yeah.
This I also think is a good thing, but it's like, I mean, again, like what happens if there are what if jobs like the idea of a job changes
Mhm.
from again it changes from like this task that you do like you're on the line
Okay.
and you're putting together these things with these parts and you got your boy and you see him every day and you guys are like
Yeah.
screwing the same screws and all whatever like
Yeah.
one day that's just not it and now you're at home sitting around and let's say like somehow you're getting a stipend and so you got this span of time where you're
Okay.
not doing that but you're still getting money like how does your brain take that that's the thing I'm curious about like I want to do more research in that to see like how did it affect people if we even have the data like
Yeah.
psychologically because again I think it goes to the like the story of the person on the line like that person was telling themselves every day I make cars and then one
Yeah.
day I mean more or
They
less
didn't
like
do it.
it was a transition but at some point it's like you're out of that so what's the story now buddy
Yeah.
like how do you reframe and I mean
Yeah.
that's probably just a natural part of it
Yeah.
the change too and I think I'm really curious about that I think that's something like it's kind of why I want to like as I'm thinking about my own shit like as my job gets automated away because like
Yeah.
video editing will get automated away and like marketing and advertising and these things the way that we communicate that's gonna go it's definitely on the
Oh, yeah.
list so like I'm thinking
Definitely.
like all right what's my story gonna be and at the moment it's just like I just want to be more creative like how do I get to a point where I can just
Yeah.
create and make things that I find meaningful but
Yeah,
I don't know
that leads me to another question that, I thought about. You talk about creativity and how do you become more creative?
yeah
Are we going to get to a point where everything is just numbers and letters, right? Zeros and ones on a board?
mm,
Where is the creativity going to come from? Like, will this be like a chat GBT thing where it says, write me this thing, blah, blah, make it look like this. And then it all of a sudden spits out this thing. Well, that may not be the greatest thing. I
mm-mm.
think, and I think that technology will happen. And I think people will use it a lot, right?
Yeah
Until it doesn't function anymore. Because here's the thing of the human factor.
yeah
Like we are interesting and unique. Like we know how to identify specific things in others. Like the
yeah
emotion of it, the fact that ChatGPT is not alive. If you are, I completely take this back.
you're speaking for that future AI that hears this
Hey,
and is like Mike Washington didn't get it you're
oh,
done
look, I'm down with computers for everyone, like no cap, you know what I mean? So, I mean, that I think that's what's gonna be missing is like the
yeah
human factor, the connection, like
yeah
a ChatGPT or computer does not have emotions.
yeah
We need to be able to connect. It's the reason why Apple they market their product.
hmm
They don't market their product, right? They sell the reason why you want their product.
yes yeah
We talked about that before. So
yes
it's
yes I think
yeah,
you're right.
that
No, there's like a human in the loop is what they call it, where in
okay.
order for the system to function properly, like you still need that human in the loop because there's certain parts of the experience of like critical problem solving or creativity where
Mhm.
you need intuition. And
Yeah,
AI, even when it becomes embodied in robots, because we're also going in that direction too,
that's
it
happening.
it can't we don't know how to engineer a unique human experience that's emotional and like those emotional experiences build the intuition so I do think you're right I think like the creativity in particular I think is just going to be amplified because I mean, I
Okay.
imagine a future in which we get to go continue living our lives doing whatever we want. And like
Okay.
in those experiences, we begin to learn and understand things at a richer, deeper level because we're more in the world. Like we're more engaging with the world. Like for example, this weekend I went skiing twice, dude, like getting after it. We went yesterday to Brighton, and it's just like a gorgeous, gorgeous resort out here. Like I'd never been. It was amazing. Anyway, we were up there with Stella's brother and sister, and her brother used to like teach people how to ski, and so he came up and was like basically giving me pointers. And as we were sitting down
Yeah.
to lunch, we were talking about these things, and we were talking about like how moguls are formed. And I was like, my brain was like, of course. It was like, oh my God, like there's metaphor, there's a rich sense of like discovery that doesn't necessarily have to do directly with the skiing. Like you said
Okay.
with like you when we had that conversation in the car when we were driving across the country and we were talking about the engine, you remember that one?
Yeah.
Where I was
Yeah.
like, bro, wait, the dynamics of an engine like are totally relatable to this thing that I'm working on. And like
Yeah.
that was like ostensibly like obviously that it didn't seem like it was connected, but the fact that we can make those connections together,
Oh, yeah.
that's the human thing right there.
Definitely. I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. So when that time comes, because it will come, you say we put
Oh
these
yeah.
automated systems, computer systems, into artificial intelligence into a human shape. First of all, I don't think they should do a human shape. That shit is weird. Okay.
I agree.
And I do have a question for you though.
Okay.
If in fact it does happen that they can get it to a point where it looks like, I would prefer more like a mannequin because then we can differentiate them between like they just don't have an
Yeah.
expression. They're neither he or she or they or them. They're just it.
Yeah.
Um, are you gonna sit across the table and have a conversation?
Oh, are you kidding me? Of course I am. Like I think I will totally I'm fully open to the idea of conversing with a robot. I already do it like with my phone.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is though, like I'm not open to well, I can't say I'm not open to it, but I don't really see assimilating the same exact experience that I would sitting
Okay.
across from a human. Like,
Yeah.
because again, there's a certain level of respect, and until we realize that this technology becomes whatever we deem as sentient, which that's a whole
Mhm.
other conversation. But like, truthfully, I think that there's a remarkable difference at the moment between interacting with a human who has suffered and lived a life of experience in which they've
Yeah.
developed over a long period of time that would be much different from speaking with a robot who has embodied knowledge that it's just been given. And
Yeah.
so I would still do it though. Like, of course. Will you? Well, you think you'd be like,
Hell
oh,
yeah.
no, get out of here.
No. I'm definitely I'm open to like most things, like as
Yeah.
long as it doesn't kill you. And if you don't say anything slick to this robot, it probably won't. So here's the thing. Like I just think that people are gonna have a hard time with this because if we can
Yeah.
have a hard time with something as simple as color, then surely we're gonna have a hard time with something that's not even like human,
I think
right?
so.
So what
Yeah.
do you do with this thing? If you go into a bathroom and you're taking a whiz, right? You're taking a piss, and this thing walks up beside you and just starts chatting, like, is that okay?
No, I mean,
But it's
just like
okay.
honestly, if I'm standing there at the urinal and some guy just starts like, well, he walks up and starts chatting to me, that's a faux pas, my guy. Like, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm sorry, bro, but like, I'm peeing right
Hey,
now. That's not the
I
time.
just want to remind you that these things are gonna be remarkably more stronger than you are.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. My hope on that front is that like they don't become violent. I'm actually more concerned. Honestly, dude, I'm more concerned. I just heard at CES, which is
Mm,
like a big technology show in Vegas. It was like last week.
okay.
At
Yeah.
CES, they announced something that actually Dr. Natalie Morris
Mm,
talked about at the end of her
no
at the end of
way.
that conversation. They came up. They're like releasing exoskeletons, dude. Like
Holy
that you
crap.
can put on your body and it makes you run like theoretically up to 12 miles an hour, which is really
No
fast for a
way.
human. And like the way I think about it is like, oh God, like I'm actually really concerned about that because it's probably going to get in the hands of military and police first. And like that's
100%.
I'm much more concerned that that's going to be an issue than these AI because like I
Oh
I
my god.
personally believe that like because the AI don't have human emotions, they can actually be more neutralized and balanced and regulated. And as long as humans don't freak out and like try and destroy the robot, just like a human to human, like if we can somehow reach this like alignment where we have a harmony, we understand like they're not human, they're like
Right.
us, but they're not us, and like we can have exchange. It should be fine because like
Yeah.
right now we can barely figure this out with a human to human. Like we still have so much conflict. And like,
Yeah.
what is that? Why does that happen? Like in some ways, like maybe it'll be easier to avoid that when you have this
It's
like
possible.
you're across the table from a robot that has it's not it's non-emotive or it doesn't
Yeah.
experience that like pain that it gets. Like if I was to be like, hey, screw you, guy, you look ugly. You're not a real human. I hope it would be like, I'm sorry you feel that way, but
Oh.
please, and I assure you that I can engage in human dialogue as best as any
Uh,
other human. Like
uh,
that's it. Instead of it being like,
yeah.
hey, screw you, buddy, and like throwing me across the room.
Well, you
I
know
don't
what I
know.
was thinking about when you said that? First of all, I think the exoskeleton thing is cool. We talked about that,
Yeah,
like
it
you
is
said,
cool.
with Dr. Natalie. But here's my question. This might be a silly question. Mike, I promise you, it's a legitimate question.
Okay.
If this thing can run 12 miles per hour exoskeleton,
Yeah.
and it can, like the computer can run, your body and stuff is still moving, right? I'm assuming it like wraps around your legs and your arms.
Yes.
Do you still get tired?
I don't know, dude. I was thinking about that too. I was like, wait, how does that work? Like, you're
How does
still
that
moving
work?
your muscles. Like, wouldn't
Well,
that overload your muscles? And then maybe
possibly while I was here, I was trying to move my arms and legs without you seeing, going like, I mean, with this,
that worked. I did not even
how does
notice
it
that.
feel?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe it's kind of like when I played baseball as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, when you're up on deck, you're waiting to hit. Like we'd put these donuts on the bat, and it was this
Mhm.
little weight that would make it heavier. So like
Yes.
you swing it. I think we've talked about this before. You swing
Yeah.
it, and you're experiencing this like heavier load on your muscles, and then you take it off, and they're like theoretically you can swing faster and hit pitches that are faster because your
Yeah.
body's like, oh, this is easy now. So like I wonder if like you just can do less reps with an exoskeleton if you're trying to like run a mile or something.
Yeah.
Like it's still the same duress, but then when you take it off, you have like greater endurance. I mean,
Uh,
but I don't know, man.
that's
Honestly, I
very
think that would probably break your feeble human body to run 12 miles per
yeah.
hour, like without being able to do that before.
Yeah.
It's got to be like a
Yeah.
ramp
That would
up.
be a problem. It'd
That
definitely be
would
a
be,
problem.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
See,
So
okay,
yeah.
I mean, but that's a good analogy for all this technology broadly. Like, as
Yeah.
fast or as slow as we take it on, there has to be like an easing into it, and like you start at a base level, you move it up a little bit, and slowly ratchet it up until it makes sense. And
Yeah.
I have some hope that that's the direction all this is going because to me that's common sense.
Yeah.
You don't accelerate too fast, and you don't go too slow and come out of alignment with all the other people who are trying to kind of go faster than you. So
I agree.
I don't know, dude.
But human historically, like we haven't made the best decisions. I mean,
That's for sure.
and it's literally in our own best interest.
Yeah,
So I hope that that can be a natural progression because I think it would be smart.
yeah.
But come on, Mike.
Do you think? Okay, what are the odds that you think that we get it right on this
Uh,
particular paradigm shift in human
like,
evolution?
should I reference history because we've gotten it wrong a lot, like a
Yeah,
lot.
past
You know, we're 2
performance,
days.
but
Uh,
past performance does not necessarily guarantee future performance, but it
It's
goes
true,
both
but
ways.
then you took the words out of my mouth. If somebody said, if you want to see where we're going, you got to look at where we came from,
Yeah,
because they tell you all the time, like
yeah,
these cycles repeat themselves. So,
yes,
and
yes,
again, maybe AI can kind of help us like moderate or be like that hand on the shoulder,
yeah.
metaphorically and physically, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
Um,
physically. Yeah,
so to say, hey, you know what, you did this a couple of years ago, just try making a right here instead of a left.
yeah.
But I don't know why he has an Italian accent. He just does.
Make a
I don't.
left, bud. It's because it's more engaging. We find it more
Yeah, I
interesting
guess
and
so.
engaging. But dude, okay,
Yeah,
this brings me to something that I wanted to talk to you about today
yeah.
because I think like I've got some thoughts on this, and like this is a part of what I'm working on. Like
Okay.
the I've been talking about writing a book, right?
Yes, yes,
As
yes,
that's
yes.
progressing, it's like more like a story. It's like a manuscript,
Okay,
and it's kind of like a book. But the idea is it's a story that is immersive and contextual to you, and it's meant to help you basically simulate your behavior through
okay,
another character. So like we
okay.
already, and the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I think that to your point, AI can help us do that ramping. We just have to be open to it. And so my thought is like, why not make something that is kind of like what we already experience, like a movie or a book or
Mhm.
something that has it built in, and it's in this like, you know, environment that's not too risky. Like it's a story. It's like art, something you take up or whatever. So that's the thing I've been thinking about. And actually, dude, I talked to my dad this week and recorded a conversation with him because I realized that he used to tell me stories that did this.
Huh.
Like think about my dad, like take the AI conversation we're having and now place it, that role of like helping humans understand how to continue forward onto like the role of a parent and a child. And so like in this case, my dad and I and my brothers. And what my dad did is what he created this like series of stories that he entitled the Bobby stories. And
Okay.
my mom reminded me of she reminded me of this and I was like, "Oh my god. Like this is really close. This is like actually the core inspiration for this thing I'm working on right now." And like I want to play a clip for you. Can I play a clip for you
Okay.
from the thing?
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
I published it on my like personal self-streaming thing
Yes.
and I just want to like play a part of it.
Yeah, let's
And then
do it.
I want to see what you think about these stories.
Okay.
Okay?
Part of it was a way for me to not just say goodnight and, go to bed. Part of it was for me to spend a little bit of extra time with you before you went to sleep. Sometimes you guys were like excited, you're not ready to go to sleep. And so a story sometimes would help that. And I don't exactly remember where the idea came from directly, but all of it was, most of the stories were based on some facts. And then of course, writer ability to expand and add in parts that weren't, that were more fiction than truth. But a lot of the stories that I told sometimes were about, like if you or your brothers were not being good, or we had some challenges with you for whatever reason, or you were misbehaving, I would wind the story around Bobby, who knew how to act, who was acting in the way that we wanted him to act as our child. And so Bobby became one of you guys. Sometimes Bobby was me, from what I remember from my childhood. And, I try to keep them in that, 5 to 10 minute range. Sometimes they were just a couple of minutes from my memory of them, but most of them were based on some fact. And, I try to make it, some of them were fun, some of them were serious. It was all ad lib.
So you got the gist of it. So basically the Bobby stories were my dad's way, and I'm sure a lot of parents do this, they make up stories, but he chose to make one character that repeated over and over again that was like made real in our brains as if it was a real person. And then
That's wild.
he wove the characters' stories and their learnings, like his Bobby's lessons and like what he was doing in life. Like he goes on to talk about how it wasn't just like lesson learning. It was also like, we're going on a vacation or Christmas is coming up or whatever. And he would like use our current context and then place it on this character. And so it wasn't about like, oh, your parents are telling you to do X, Y, Z. It's like that's like the direct way to correct behavior for a kid. Instead, it was like proxy. And like, dude, those stories like deeply seated in our brains. Like
Wow.
like throughout our childhood, they were super, super, I mean, like he used it for a while. Eventually I got too old. And like, this is the funny part. If you listen to it later, I realized what he was doing. And I was like, oh no, that's like a bad story. Like that's just, you're just using what happened in my life. But the point is that story, the way that he does it, what I want to do, dude, like is take this story that I'm writing, which is what the book would be, but then build a system where that story it's doing the same thing as the Bobby story, where it's like taking you and you're experiencing the story. And as you go, like it starts to change the story to be based around you. Like, and it would have to understand you in some way. That you'd have to give it something. But basically, I think that is a really good idea when it comes to people learning how to be going into the future. Because what we can do is we can create all kinds of stories like that. And at the same time, the AI, and this is where it borders Black Mirror, the AI could learn about humans in return. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
I
just
think that's sick.
as like I was growing up and my dad was understanding like me and my behaviors and then molding it, the AI could do the same. And to me, it's like, dude, it kind of feels like it could fit the problem where it's like,
Yeah.
you've got the AI, it's like, oh my God, it's going to get way smarter than us and kill us all. Or like human uprising is going to like, it's just going to ruin everything and we're going to crash and burn.
Yeah.
So I think like there's something to this, but I'm curious, like, does that make sense to you?
I think it's sick. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's dope. Like a really cool way to get you to see the point. And it reminds me of there's been some videos, and I know you've seen them on Instagram and TikTok. Like,
Mhm.
and the guy or gal or whomever is training the dog to do a thing or to not do a thing.
Mm.
And they take like a stuffed animal and they like smack the stuffed animal and the dog is watching and he's just like, and then like it corrects the behavior,
Oh, because
like,
the dog is like empathizing to some degree with the
yes,
stuffed animal.
because he's
Oh,
like,
dude.
oh, if he did that to the dog, then so not as extreme, of course. That's just a funny example. But
well,
yeah, totally. If we present these stories in a way that kind of are reflective of
yeah,
the
it's
environment, or
it's like
I think it's
reflective.
sick.
It's like reflective media. Like instead of
Yeah,
representational, where like I'm reading a bunch about story. Like I'm researching story structure for all this writing I'm doing, and like typically most of the stuff we interact with there's a motif or a theme in it where we can watch
yeah,
like a movie or a TV series and realize like, oh, that character like grew in a certain way. And like
right.
there was this overarching thing the writers wanted to get across. That's a
Yeah,
representation. It's like a representation of an idea or a concept about reality. But I'm saying like, no, reflective, not representation, but reflective media in
yeah,
that way.
okay,
And like,
yeah,
what's really funny is like you mentioned like the smacking the dog thing. Like in the conversation later on, like I brought up a central question, which I've been thinking about for a while now, which is like that like, the question with the dog is like, are you manipulating that dog by freaking them out? Or are you inspiring them to act better by like not doing it to them? Like
that could be slightly controversial.
yes. So the question I had for my dad, which was like a little controversial for our
Okay.
conversation, I think, was like, when you were doing that, like thinking about it now,
Oh God.
when you were a parent, like for any parent, this is my question.
Uh-huh.
I think it's fair. I was like, what's the line between manipulation and inspiration?
Oh God, I knew that was coming.
He was like, well, I was like, no, I wasn't saying you were manipulating us. I genuinely believe
Right.
that it was a really creative thing. Like
I think so too.
he's a sales guy. Like he's telling stories for a living at that time. It makes total sense. And it's inspiring me to this day. So I think
Yeah.
he did a great job, but there's that line. Like, I think the Black Mirror part of this is like, you could easily use this
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
manipulate people too.
Yeah. This is totally the Black Line thing, or Black
Black Mirror. Yeah.
thing, right? It's just totally the Black Mirror thing.
Yeah.
And like you said, it could be good or it could be really dark. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm choosing to imagine that this was just a really creative way. I don't know. I was never a parent. I helped raise my brother and sister, right?
Mm.
And let me tell you something. My 12-year-old, 14-year-old mind could surmise like when something wasn't working or when I wasn't getting through. And that's as an older brother, I'm sure parents feel the same.
Mhm.
You're trying to do whatever you possibly can to get your child to that place where they can see everything that you can see. That's the
Right.
most difficult part, which is the
Yes.
reason why this aspect or this storytelling or this biography or whatever you're writing
Mhm.
is important, because if you can choose the different destinations that you'll end
Yeah.
or the path that you'll take, and it'll conceptually bring you to this place, that's incredible.
I mean, yeah. The funny thing is, it didn't last. That was what I think is most
Mm,
interesting, and that's the challenge for I think me and whoever joins me in this endeavor, like you included, like is
yeah.
how do you actually get away with it? Because like at a certain point, like I grew up and I realized like, oh, I get what you're doing, and then it no longer
Yeah.
worked. But I wonder if that's if again, like, was that fine? Like, if I realized it, who cares? Like at that point, I was watching my dad imagine something, and it helped me to learn how to imagine. And
Okay.
he even said that there was interactivity. So, Like we would ask a question about it, and he'd change it, or he'd ask us a question. What do you think Bobby did? And we would contribute. So making that back and forth, like that system, and doing it in a way that is like, reasonably like it's ethical, but mainly it's like meant to be awe-inspiring, and it's meant to be like this sense of discovery, and like the stories matter. I think there's something there that can allow it to be inspirational, and I don't know. So like that's a hunch that I have. I haven't really seen much out there about it, but like when I really start to look into story and all that stuff in general, it seems like it makes a lot of sense, because like, dude, if you really think about stories, I mean, broadly, like why talk about going back to how we did it? Like humans have been doing this since the beginning of time.
Eons.
I mean, like it's an instinct in your system. So like when you were trying to get something through to like your siblings, like were you using this? Like what did this ever occur to you? Was there an opportunity to like do that? Or was it just like you were just like throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and like seeing what stuck?
The best way to do it is to be a good storyteller. You know, and again, I think people write books because they want to tell a story. And in order to get to the same story place or point in any given time in the book, you have to be able to have the reader or end user ask the question.
Yeah.
And I think that's essentially what Bobby was doing for you guys. Like, poking you or prodding you, like to ask the question, that you were trying to get to. Like for you to figure it out, for somebody to tell you it's one thing, but for you to be able to write a math equation out long form is a different type of understanding.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, dude, you're hitting the nail on the head, I think. Like the ability to ask the right questions is really all we need to do, because like our brains then work kind of automatically. Like, I mean, it's what we've been doing with the podcast. Like the first couple chapters of this thing we're doing have been like asking people a specific question and being this like these warm, inviting like people who are kind of randomly appearing in front of them. And like by asking it, we had many instances where people were like, dude, that was really cool. Like they were inspired by that, because like interacting with strangers isn't often like that. So it actually, it stuck that question in their mind even more. And like, we've had people say like, yo, I was thinking about that later. I was talking to like my family about that.
Sick.
And I think that's it. Like, it's just stimulating the curiosity and thing in our brain. And then maybe that's enough. Like, it doesn't have to be manipulation in that case.
I agree. And for this instance, talking about all of this stuff like artificial intelligence, storytelling, manipulation, book writing, just like, it's all about, I think, this like what do you call it? Self-accusation or
self-actualization.
Self-actualization, right? It's the like realizing that you are in charge of the story. You get to choose which path you go down. But sometimes, and I think this is more what like the book or the manifesto that you're hinting at, is sometimes you get lost along that journey and you don't really understand how you got there. And it may be a good place, but oftentimes maybe not so much.
Yeah.
But we need a guide.
Yeah,
a spirit warrior,
Yeah. Well, dude, that's the part that reminds me of you and like our relationship. Because again, I talked about last time, like a lot of the inspiration from this also comes from my own journey and being in a spot where I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know where's my life going? I have no idea. And like, do you think from your perspective that anybody can do this? That anybody can like, I don't know, is it reaching something? It just like anyone can self-actualize? Do you think that's a part of every human experience?
I do, but like the stories, like Bobby's got to ask you the right questions. And oftentimes, and I can tell you, and I think you've been here as well, if I'm not mistaken, we don't know the questions to ask. That's why they have self-help guides. Because you need help and you're not sure how to get there. So you need self, which is me, help. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I think that's the whole purpose and point of the journey is one, to figure out why you're actually in the place that you are.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
But I feel like you and I see people very similarly in this way, where like once you get the question, it starts going. And even if it's a weird question, like what is love or what is peace? Like at first people are like, but then there's an immediate response that kind of comes up from somewhere and like it continues. And I just wonder, like, can it be possible to turn the idea of self-help, because it's a whole industry, obviously, like it's everything that like,
100%,
like is out there on like psychological TikTok and whatever.
Yeah.
But that all still requires you to engage with it and for you to come across the right thing at the right time. So like, could we change the definition of it from like the thing outside of you being the self-help to like thinking about the word or that phrase differently, like self-help, like I am helping myself?
Yes.
Do you think that's possible?
I think
being able to get to those questions basically on your own.
I think it is. When you say on your own, I think it's subjective, because if you read a piece of material and you realize something, the book assisted you, but you had to get there on your own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's such a subjective term.
You're right.
So even if I go to therapy and I'm seeing somebody, like they're gonna help me get there, but they can't take me there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You got to be like at least a little bit open to it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think people who are looking for a biography, autobiography, manifesto, is any group of stories or any title, they have to be searching for something already. So they've initiated the journey. So if they pick it up, like I just ordered the 3 Joe Dispenza book. Like I'm looking.
Nice.
They just arrived yesterday. I was super stoked. Yes, people, I'm old, so I like a good hard copy if I can get one.
Oh, dude, me too. Call me old too. I love a hard copy book.
So I got all 3 and I'm super stoked. What am I looking for? Obviously, if I'm somebody like shifting through something, I'm like, what's this guy into? It's like not, I'm not ordering beer. I'm ordering stuff for self-fulfillment, self-realization, self-actualization,
But what about,
so that's the thing.
Dude, but what about the people who aren't doing that? Like, do you think that, like, how do you get to that person? And not even get to them, like, how do they get to it? Like, let's say someone goes to a therapist and they're just like, nah, screw you. Like, no, that's true. Like, they've got the wall up or whatever. Like, how do you engage with, how does that person engage with the same stuff? Like, I mean, are there people who are like, like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like lost causes in that way, where they're just like, no, I'm good, And like, what do those people do?
I don't know, but I feel like on the next episode, we should possibly ask ChatGPT.
Oh, okay. That's a good idea. It'll be you, me, and ChatGPT next time.
I feel like let's ask ChatGPT. I think that's a solid question. And we'll even get him to tell us the story about Bobby to see what he comes up with. He or she, it comes up with. You know what I mean?
I like that.
So we're going to leave you guys on that note, guys. But until next time, I'm Mike.
And I'm also Mike.
And this is the Not Known Podcast.
Peace. Dope, dude. Dope. That was fun.
I'm so stoked.